Thank you, Mark, for your kind introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, and I wish to thank the organizers of this event to invite me to this conference and to give me the honor and privilege to make this statement. I was requested, or somebody wanted to find what's happening in my country. Somebody was some news and the press and so on. I say, I think that is just a question of a violent crisis in one state. It happened to be my own state too. That is my town, where there has been a problem between the so-called settlers and then the so-called indigenes. You know, usually we in Africa, there are people who may aspire more than others. Just a question of poverty. I believe that that's the question of poverty that's creating this incessant crisis, particularly in that city, where most of the people who claim to have come from another city stay in there and then become more prosperous. Then they have a lot of possessions, and others in the outskirts lack some of these basic things. So it has been creating a lot of crisis, and it happened that those who claim to have been settlers, those happen to be Muslims, predominantly Muslims, and then the people around are Christian and enemies. So when they struggle for possession of other land or things around, then it becomes like a fight between Christian and Muslim. But that's not the major issue. The major basic thing is the crisis of the issue we're talking about, possession, be able to develop in the world. So I have to say this clearly, that there was no change of government in my country. No, it is just this crisis that has been going on. Sometimes they are able to contain it, but it creates a lot of concern to us who are even living there. With this note, my topic, which Mark has given to me, is the rise of Africa, as a title, with the subtitle, which is New Strategies and Approaches to Governance and Sustainable Development in Africa. And then he requested me to give a lot of examples from my country. So the subject matter is Rise of Africa. So I'll start with a few quotes. Pope Benedict XVI stated at the end of a week of synod reflection for African bishops in Rome last October. He said, I quote, "Africa, have courage. Rise up from suffering, poverty, disease, injustice, wars, violence, and forced migration," unquote. I could add to that list corruption, lack of good governance, accountability, and human rights violations to this list. Then a very old Nigerian who wrote that in 1935-1941, his father was in one of the biggest cities in Kano, working there in the railways, an Igbo man. Then the father used to buy an almanac, this calendar. The title of that almanac he said, "Africa shall rise." The question when. Then when he asked his father, what's the meaning of these words you have on your almanac? His father said that Africa was a backward continent, but that it was hoped that one day it will rise in development like Europe and America. Then the same Nigerian now asked last year, "Oh, has Africa risen?" So this is with these quotes, I will now move to my main topic, and we should concentrate on this question of approaches to governance and sustainable development, with a particular reference to Nigeria. Nigeria became independent in 1960 from Britain, and then inherited what we call parliamentary system of government. Progressive Nigeria became a republic, and then we call it adopted the presidential system of government based on the U.S. model. It has 36 states with 774 local government areas. The states are further grouped into 6 political zones. The purpose or the main objective of this arrangement are twofold. First, to give a sense of belonging to all Nigerians. bring government to the grassroots in order to promote development at the level and respect minority rights. Then the second objective of this arrangement, to be able to make resources available and how it is disbursed to ensure what we call in court even development unquote, of the whole country. The objective that the country should be developed equally. Presently, there are over 300 different ethnic groups out of its 140 million people. And we have a very large concentration of universities and colleges in the country, totaling almost over 50. So Nigeria is definitely a highly educated country, except for the fact that there are pockets of poverty, as I mentioned. Then Nigeria was ruled by a military regime until 1999, when we have a democratic government. Then in that period of military regime, in our history, the effort at that time was that since the military regime, the government has struggled to be able to come into what we call democratic system of government, which we achieved in 1999, just barely 10 years ago. Commentators of Nigeria always talk of a difficult country or a violent country, very difficult to live, without regard to the antecedent of the country and part of process. As I indicated earlier, such comments are varied, while some highlight the shortcomings they believe exist in Nigeria. Others see Nigeria as a country that provides immense benefits and comfort. In fact, visitors to Nigeria always end up wanting to stay longer. A young German lady, just about six months ago, who went there on the exchange program, and then she told me she was going to Lagos, and she said, "Oh, Lagos is a very difficult place, but I hope she will enjoy it." She left here in June, but just about 3 weeks ago, she called me and said, "Oh, Ambassador, can you extend my visa for 3 more months?" And which we did, and she's still there. Means she enjoyed staying in that marvelous or that chaotic city we call Lagos. Nigeria, like any developing country in Africa, faces the challenges of development. For example, there is shortage of some infrastructure, such as water, electricity, good roads. Nigeria is one of Africa's resource-rich countries, which is also very rich in oil, which form 80% of the GDP. There are other resources such as solid minerals, agricultural products, untapped tourist potential, as well as an extensive, rich, and diverse culture. Despite the riches from oil resources, the country has continued to contend with problems in the area of economic performance and poverty alleviation for its people. When oil prices were high in the 1970s and 1980s, government spending was far more than the economy could absorb. Exchange rates was very high and distorted, and there was an overvaluation of the local currency, as the naira, which was the national currency is even stronger, was then stronger than the US dollar, and almost at par with the British pound. Coupled with the military regime's lack of fiscal discipline, resulted in spending spree, and people were frequenting Europe and America for shopping. Nigeria became a dumping ground for all manner of goods because there was free for all importation of finished goods. The nation's ports were full with imports from all over the world. But with the introduction of IMF induced structural adjustment in 1996, we call it SAP, the reality of living within our means was glaring, and the days of easy money had gone. There were the issue of poor environmental management, particularly in the oil-producing states known today as Niger Delta. This issue dominates the political and administrative problems of the country up to today, to this day. The issues of resource control and human rights violation led to a series of problems that linger on. The role of oil companies and their corporate social responsibility was on top of the agenda for the control of oil resources. Then the government tried to tackle some of the problems by creating additional states for them, or giving what we call a Niger Delta Development Commission. All this one were to be able to address some problems. The government also established recently what we call a Niger Delta Ministry, so that because there were kidnapping of oil workers and then also foreigners in order to get ransom from them. But then since 1999 also, the government has put in some fiscal management of resources through democratic means. And as such, there is no expenditure in government that is not approved by the National Assembly. In fact, the view everywhere being held is that Africa fares poorly in measures to attract foreign direct investment to its business environment. A lot has been done over the years to rectify this anomalous situation. Government has also put in place and sustained an environment for the conduct of business that will encourage the private investors into our country. To attract foreign investment, particularly in Nigeria, has signed what we call investment promotion and protection agreement with many countries, including Germany. What I've said doesn't mean that Nigeria has no problem. We have a lot of problems and challenges. And until recently, Nigeria was one of the highly indebted countries. But through the good foundation laid down by our country in democracy, the fight against corruption, as well as the rule of law, the international community, particularly the Paris Club of Creditors, decided about 2-3 years ago to cancel and forgive the debts and free some resources for development in our country. Corruption. Paul Wolfowitz, the World Bank president, on taking office, announced that the fight against corruption, both in the bank and the recipient countries, was top of his agenda. He said, and I quote, that corruption was the single biggest obstacle to development because it weakens fundamental systems. Corruption distorts markets. Corruption encourages people to apply for their skills and energies in non-productive ways. Unquote. Transparency International, which is based here in Berlin, used to rank Nigeria as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. The corruption perception index for most African countries is very high. I recall that in Merida, in Mexico, in December 2003, in where we were going to adopt the United Nations Convention on Corruption, one of the most corrupt countries, African countries, according to the TI, was the first to sign and was also the first to deposit its instrument of ratification at the political signing conference of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. But corruption is not limited to Africa because it is universal, and all countries are guilty as well. Grand corruption takes place in developed countries as well, both in private and public sectors. Especially we have the case of Enron, also have the question of Halliburton. Even in Germany here, there's the issue of Siemens and so on. The fight against corruption is centered to good governance, as without accountability, business will never flourish. Nigeria has also effectively forced the oil companies in Nigeria to comply with their obligation on corporate social responsibility. Then also have the issue of Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which Nigeria is rated as one of the best and most effective worldwide. Then the issue of democracy and development. The absence of democracy and the struggle for resources control are the root causes of the problems of Africa. All the wars and crises in Africa centered on resources control and power sharing. Michelle Aoun, a lady who writes a lot, a business lady, a journalist, she wrote in a book recently, he said, entitled, "It's Our Turn to Eat," referring to an event in an African country, captured this issue very well. Until recently, the majority of African countries were ruled by military dictatorship, by seizing government through the barrel of the gun rather than through the ballots. Nigeria was not an exception and even resulted in a civil war, like most African countries had experienced. Others, once getting there, that means if they are elected or if they get themselves there by force as president or prime minister, whatever it is, they never wanted to step down. We call this in Africa the so-called sit-down leaders, until they do their part. Even after the term they decide either they die or for any reason, their children take over in order to continue finish the good works of their parents. We have so many there. I don't want to name them because I don't want to be shot when I leave this place. Former president of CIC knows what I'm talking about. But this cannot continue forever. I believe so, because the youth like you cannot allow that to continue. But the good thing is that democracy has taken root in most African countries. Coups have been outlawed by the African Union. The African Union has also included responsibility for intervention in any country to save lives and property of citizens whose lives have been violated by their leaders. The concept of non-interference in internal affairs has been dropped in the AU Treaty. Indeed, the African Union Non-Aggression and Common Defense Pact comes into force in January 2010. This is a positive contribution to strengthen the AU peace and security. AU is African Union, as a commitment of the African Union to enhance Africa's security. This year is also marked as the year of peace and security in Africa. The next issue, which is very important in Africa, is Asian imports into Africa. In recognition of the need for Africa to take up responsibility for the development of Africa by Africans, the African heads of state and government launched the new Partnership for African Development, called NEPAD, based on the New African Initiative in July 2001 in Lusaka, Zambia. This is an AU initiative with a provision to monitor its implementation in form of peer review mechanisms. There is also an initiative by one African, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, which stimulates debate on good governance, provides objective criteria for citizens to hold their governments accountable, and also recognizes achievement in African leadership by giving awards for good governance for African leaders, especially those who have left office. It is like a kind of a Nobel Peace Prize for good governance in Africa. There seems to be a new scramble for Africa, not for colonialism, but for its markets and resources, particularly from Asia. China is not new to Africa. In fact, Chinese were among the first to arrive Africa for its wild animals. Chinese also helped to build the Tanzam Railway from Tanzania to Zambia, a project the Europeans viewed unprofitable at that time. China also played key roles in the decolonization of Africa and is today rated to have been even rival or surpass Europe and America in diplomatic representation in Africa. In fact, China has even overtaken Germany in lead for exports of goods worldwide last year. The Chinese refrain from meddling in the policies and internal affairs of African countries and is a member of the Group of 77 at the United Nations Forum. These are all strategic reasons for doing so. Indeed, China is seen to be a true friend of Africa and has contributed to and benefited from the rise of African development. It is the why in these African countries is because it is totally against the naming and shaming of any African country. So it allows us to penetrate. But with all this, what I said, there are negatives on this. But as Africa opens its doors for trade instead of aid, a new problem has arisen. China and India exports and services have created problems in Africa. Whether we like it or not, it is the truth. The rise of cheap manufactured exports from China and India has destroyed African manufactured, particularly textiles. In Nigeria, nearly all the more than 150 textile firms have been closed due to the flood of cheap import from Asia. The same for building materials, with more than 500,000 job losses over a period of 10 years. Under U.S. African Growth and Opportunity Act, ALGOA, I call it, some African countries, particularly, I think, Lesotho and others, were given preferential entry into U.S. markets for textiles. Similarly, market access for primary commodities was also given to African countries under the EU, ACP, EU ACP Economic Partnership Agreement. But the African countries are not able to fulfill the demand due to shortages resulting from competition from China and India. I don't know whether Lesotho is still having all the firms with them. I didn't go to detail, but I'm sure they are on the downward trend. But in any case, there are signs that things are getting better in Africa. Conflict and civil wars have diminished, and very few states are involved in armed conflicts. Apart from Darfur, Somalia, which is quiet now, Eastern DRC, everywhere else seems to be quiet. In fact, according to Richard Bowden, life is better in Somalia now than 10 years ago. Multinational companies operating in Africa have also improved their operation in Africa by respecting environmental protection and the effects of climate change. I wanted to bring a map of Africa so that you can see it. Yes, it's there. It's not only one country. Don't think this is one country. There are 52 countries or 53 countries there, independent countries, sovereign countries. It's not one. So sometimes people say you are African, thinking that maybe I'm from one country. No. There are about 53 countries. They are independent countries. The concept that Africa has risen will also be boosted further with the 2010 FIFA events in South Africa. All African governments and peoples look forward to this event with rapt attention, believing that the world will give them good publicity and portray the good part of Africa, and not the negative images that Africa is still a dark continent. You can know that at least there are quite a number of African teams playing in the World Cup. Some of you may not know that many years ago, Africa used to have only one representative in the World Cup. And in one of them, which I used to learn, which I was a student in Holland, was watching it. It was, I think it was then Zaire. It was beaten 9-1 by a European country. But today, I don't think we can get that type of beating from any of the European. So really, Africa has risen up. Yeah, because I was witnessing when Algeria beat Germany 2-1 also. So you can imagine that Africa has risen up. Then recommendation on what I'm saying, all this one, what to do, what have to do, or what to be done. I believe that reducing agricultural subsidies in Europe and Africa and America to create a level playing field to enable African agriculture compete favorable with those in their markets will be a way to address the concept of Africa instead of giving them aid. There's also an urgent need to conclude what we call the World Trade Organization Doha Round of multilateral trade agreements, which is also important. We are looking forward to that. Africa has risen because it has, as I said, 53 independent countries, and they need effective collaboration with the rest of the world. Africa has also potential for significant growth through import substitution and international trade, as well as the need to maintain traditional export markets. That is European. They need to also retain European markets because of the quality that we need from them. We always emphasize that. Which is the next point. Quality of goods and services to be encouraged, not the cheap imports from Asia that do not last for long. Partnership at different levels, as well as was the case with the AU-EU conference that was held in Lisbon, as well as the President Kula's German-African Partnership Forums, as well as business forums organized by different countries, as well as the involvement of NGOs, private sectors, and civil society in the development of Africa. Education is the key to development, technology and communication. There are take-off sports in Africa, definitely. Or take-off sports, point that I've already taken up, because South Africa, Egypt, go down to West Africa and East Africa and West Africa. There are certain points that are really gone up. Only time will tell when they will engulf the rest of the continent. Africa is definitely the next destination for commerce, so Europe should not lag behind in the new scramble for Africa. The next issue, which is important, is the fight against corruption. The need for good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, and the rule of law must be pursued vigorously in Africa. Then we have to engage China positively in all aspects of Africa's socio-economic development, including democracy, respect for human rights, and fundamental freedoms. Before I conclude, two issues of profound effects on the rights of Africa, namely climate change and external shocks resulting from the global economic and financial crisis, have been left out or not discussed at length because of lack of time and the fact that I don't want to go to those issues. These issues are hitting Africa's already vulnerable population and good governance. They have equally affected or worsened the condition for development and undermining human security in Africa. I left them because these issues are global and require global solution through global governance by all countries. Maybe some of you followed the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference, which was I also had the privilege to attend. Finally, Africa needs partnership and support from all countries under mutual respect. Africa needs continued collaboration with the rest of the world in all fields, and the rest of the world also needs Africa to collaborate. Knowledge and technology must be shared and appreciated by all humanity, and Africa deserves its own share of world prosperity. I thank you very much for giving me the time.